So good morning everyone. Today we are late by some couple of minutes. I hope by
Thanks.
good morning. So I will straight away start the session because we are already late and I have another scheduled meeting at 12:30. So I will be stopping at 12:30. So anyways, I will start it. Others will join maybe in a couple of minutes. I will start sharing my screen first. Hope my audio and visual are clear. You are already able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. So we'll go ahead. So yesterday also there were some technical issues with TechUp and we were not able to continue the session past 12. So anyways, today we have 1 hour and 10 minutes. We will try to complete whatever was left yesterday and we will also start some topics which are for today. So we have done what will be capacitance between two conductors or in the middle of the conductors. We have done the derivation from Gaussian point of view. We have taken electric field which will be due to Gauss law and we have integrated that with particular to find out delta V from the fundamental equation of delta V, that is potential difference, and we have got finally capacitance per unit length as C upon L, which will be equivalent to 2 pi epsilon naught upon nature log of D by A. So that is what capacitance between two conductor, or we call it as two concentric conductors, will be. Now this idea is very very important because this idea is used in terms of coaxial cables, what we say in day-to-day life. I can give you a traditional example where we use coaxial cables for connecting our dish antenna to our television. Even in many other applications, we use coaxial cable for transporting of EM signal. One important parameter of coaxial cable is its per foot capacitance and its entire performance changes with that particular aspect. So this type of value of capacitance are calculated when we talk about two conductors which are in concentric or coaxial probe, in which if you recall, if you have seen this, then you will see there is an inner conductor, there is an outer conductor, and inside, in between of them, we have some sort of dielectric material. Now, because we have already seen the derivation for concentric cylinders, how to find out capacitance. Same logic will be applicable over here. And typically, for most of the coaxial cables available in the market, the capacitance per foot is 22 picofarad. And the impedance of that particular thing is 75 ohms. So, performance of these coaxial cables, after all, depends upon the capacitance, what is stored in that particular transmission line. The coaxial cable is also known as transmission line. And from transmission line point of view, capacitance in coaxial conductors is very, very important. So this capacitance is not only because of charges or because of only parallel plates, but in conductors, it is very useful when we talk about capacitance of a coaxial cable in terms of transmission lines. And these transmission lines are used to transmit EM waves or EM energy from one point to another. The best possible example is I've already given when you see the coaxial cable connected from the dish antenna to your set-top box which is placed in your home. So dish antenna will catch some sort of energy and that energy will be transformed from the antenna to the dish TV. And even from the dish TV to your television, we use coaxial cables to connect it. Now there are many other forms of coaxial cables which we use day by day. So that is what application of capacitance per unit length for a coaxial cable is. Now the third logic or third geometry for which we have to consider the capacitance is isolated spheres. So if I talk about isolated spheres, they can be thought of as concentric spheres whose outer sphere is at an infinity and has zero potential. I will quickly give you the mathematics for this. So we already know the potential outside a conducting sphere is V, which is Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught R, where R is the R is the vector pointing outwards of that conducting sphere. The potential at the surface of a charged sphere of radius r. We have done derivation for this, and it says that V will be equivalent to Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught r. So the capacitance at the surface of an isolated sphere, you can calculate from the concept of capacitance, where capacitance equals to Q upon V. So we get the value as capacitance at the surface of an isolated sphere will be 4 pi epsilon naught r. What I'm going to teach you is nothing very high level concepts. These are simple things, but you have already done in your plus 2 and when you are talking about capacitance between two charged elements. We have already done for the cases of 2 point charges. We have done for the cases of 2 parallel plates. We have done for the cases of concentric cylinders. And the last case, what we are going to see is of isolated spheres. So for calculating it, let us assume there are two spheres. There is a gap between them. We have two spheres, as you can see. Radius of the first sphere is A. Radius of the second sphere is B. Charge on the first sphere, let us consider it as positive, and charge on the second sphere, let us consider it as negative. So we have positive charge and negative charge sphere. Now from the concept of two parallel plates, we can say that there will be some capacitance between these two conductors. Because after all, if I have two charged elements between them, there will be some sort of capacitance. So we will calculate this using our concept of Gauss law, what we have already done. Electric field between the spheres, we already know. We have done mathematics for this. And we know that electric field will be equivalent to Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught r square. Electric field is this. Once you know the electric field, then the next part is to find out the potential, and you know potential difference is integration of electric field with respect to the distance, and that is what we can easily do it. So delta V, that is the potential difference between these two elements, between A and B. A is the radius over here, B is radius over here. The potential difference between the surface of this and the surface of this can be calculated by our traditional mathematical formula of potential difference. Once I have got the potential difference, now it becomes very easy to calculate the capacitance. The capacitance is Q upon V. In this case, it is delta V. You can simply do the math and please do the calculation. We'll finally get the capacitance between two concentric spheres will be 4 pi epsilon naught upon 1 by A minus 1 by B, where A being the radius of the smaller sphere, B being the radius of the larger sphere. So this was mathematics, and you know how to calculate now capacitance between two concentric spheres, between two concentric cylinders, between two parallel plates. So it is very important to understand this, because this gives you an understanding about how the charges will behave when they are lying between two conductors. Typically, if you see, because of the charges, there will be some sort of electric field. And because of that electric field, we know will have potential difference, because we know the concept of potential difference between 2 points. And if I take the ratio of charge upon potential difference, then I will get a potential. So then I will get a capacitance. So it is very interesting that we started with some point charges, then we saw uniformly distributed charges, then we saw charges between two conductors, and finally we end up with the concept that when we have two conductors with some charges, positive and negative, at the end we will have some sort of capacitance associated with these two charges. Now the question arises, suppose if plates are very, very far. If plates are very, very far, then what gives the capacitance? If plates are very, very far, can someone comment and please mute yourself? Someone is talking, let me mute myself. distance between these two parallel plates or two concentric pairs is infinity. And what will be the capacitance? Any comments?
Yes, sir. Please come again.
So suppose both the spheres, the distance between both the spheres is infinity. It's very, very large. And what will be the capacitance? Am I audible?
Infinite.
Yes, in infinity.
Infinity capacitance भी larger होगा सर उसका?
It will be larger or zero? Because see, if infinity is there, then electric field will be zero. If electric field is zero, then ultimately your potential is going to be zero, and because of that, you can have zero. Right? So that is what it is, that it will be zero. Anyways, let's see. Okay, so I will do some mathematical calculations to further elaborate the concept of capacitance. So I will give you through mathematical calculations. So let us calculate the capacitance of a capacitor whose plates are 20 cross 3 centimeter square and are separated by a distance of 1.0 mm, and the medium between these plates is air. So you have all those things. We are talking about two parallel plates. I have shown them. Area is 0.2 meters into 0.03 meters. So that we already know of that. Now from our calculations, we know that capacitance will be equivalent to epsilon naught A upon D. D is the distance, A is the area of the plates, and epsilon naught is permittivity of that particular medium. Please remember, in this case, permittivity of air is that of vacuum, that is 8.85 into 10 to the power minus 12. So I can straight away calculate, and I can find out that capacitance between two plates will be 53 into 10 to the power minus 12 farad, or we call it as, it will be 53 picofarad. So it will be very small capacitance which lies between two parallel plates which has a finite area, which are kept at a finite distance. So this is very simple. You can easily do it. You know, just keeping the values. You can use your calculators and then you can calculate these values. Now, what is the charge on each plate if the capacitor is connected to a 12-volt battery? So now the second part of the same scenario, that what will be the charge on each plate if the capacitor is connected to a 12-volt battery? So for calculating the charge, you know Q equals to C into V. C we have already calculated, that is 53 into 10 to the power minus 12, and the potential difference delta V or potential is 12 volts. So I can easily say the charge will be 6.4 into 10 to the power minus 10 coulombs. So now the charge between the plates, same plate will be 6.4 into 10 to the power minus 10 coulombs. So this will be the charge lying between on each plate. On one plate it will be positive, and another plate it will be negative. So what is the electric field between the plates? So that also we can calculate, because electric field is related to the potential, that is delta V upon D. D is the distance, delta V is the potential difference. Distance is already given. You know the potential difference, that is 12 volts, we have already mentioned. The electric field will be 12,000 volts per meter. And the direction of electric field, as you all know, it is from positive potential towards negative potential. So you can see the direction of electric field will be from the lower plate towards higher plate, because the potential of higher plate is 0 and potential of lower plate is 12. So that will be the direction of electric field. So now you know what will be the capacitance, you know what will be the charge, you know what will be the electric field, and in which direction the electric field will be. So after considering those aspects of capacitor, what are the various possible configurations of capacitor, what is the capacitance of a capacitor, what will be the charges on the capacitor, what will be electric field inside the capacitor, all these things we know it. Now we will try to analyze a capacitor when it is in a particular circuit. When a capacitor has a circuit, as a circuit point of view, I hope many of you will relate this with circuit theory, what we have already studied in our classic +2, or you will some electrical engineers will study at higher stages too. Let us see how a capacitor behaves in a scenario when there are more than two capacitors or more than 100 capacitors are there, whatever the concept is. But we will try to analyze the behavior of a capacitor in a particular circuit where more than two capacitors are. So we will quickly see this, how it is. That was our agenda item for yesterday, but unfortunately we have to stop over yesterday. Today we will continue with this also. Right. So there are two possible combinations, that there can be circuits which contains capacitor in parallel, and there can be circuits which contains capacitor in series. The two possible configurations are there. We will see one by one each of them. So the first configuration, as you know, the circuits which contains capacitors in parallel. So I have shown you, this is the actual diagram or actual scenario where we have capacitors which are connected in parallel. So this is the actual scenario, and from the circuit point of view, I am showing this. What I am showing, there is a battery which is connected with these three capacitors in this particular fashion. This particular fashion, we call it as parallel configuration. Now for understanding this parallel configuration, we call it parallel when we have choices between the terminals. When I say by the choices, it says, suppose I am moving from this particular point, this is one terminal, and if I move further, at this I have first, second and third choice. And similarly, if I go from here, there is first, second, third choice. So fundamentally we say that three capacitors or three resistors, any three things are parallel when we have choices to select the path to move to individual capacitors. If there is no choice, then we call it as series. I will try to demonstrate this logic when I will discuss about series also. So right now, for the moment's sake, let us say that since we have these 2 points, VAB is the voltage across both the points, and this is the point. Here we have one choice, second choice, and third choice. Similarly, if you look, we have first choice, second choice, and third choice. And from our understanding of potential, we can easily say that potential across all three capacitors will be same. So VAB will be V, which will be same for all the three capacitors. The general concept is when capacitor components are connected in parallel, then the voltage drop across these components are all the same. Please remember this. I hope everyone knows it, but still you all must remember, for parallels, voltage is same across each individual element. Now this is true from circuit point of view for any component which is in parallel and we have two terminals across which voltage is applied. So let us see how to calculate overall equivalent capacitance of this. So I have three capacitors, C1, C2, C3. I have defined the polarity, positive and negative, as you can see in the diagram. So Q1, that is charge over capacitor 1, will be C1V, because V will be same, so we cannot denote V1, V2, V3. Even if we denote with V1, V2, V3, that all will be equivalent to the overall V, which is across AB. So I am denoting all voltages with respect to V. So Q1 is C1V, Q2 is, which is charge over second capacitor, is C2V, and Q3 is C3V. So we have got charges across capacitor 1, capacitor 2, and capacitor 3. Now imagine replacing that parallel combination of capacitors by a single equivalent capacitor. So what we are going to do, instead of these three, let us replace with a single equivalent capacitor, which is the combination of which has the same effect of first, second, and third. So as you know, that total charge will be equivalent to C equivalent into V. That we already know from our understanding of capacitance. So charge equals to CV. So if I talk about the total circuit, then total charge will be equivalent to C equivalent, that is equivalent of the capacitors of all, into V. And this total charge will be nothing but equivalent to the charge for the first, second and third capacitor. So written as Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3. So now this is very important to understand that total charge will be combination of all three and the voltage will be same across the capacitors. So I write it as total charge will be equivalent to C equivalent V, which will be equivalent to Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3. A summation of charges across all the capacitors which are connected in parallel. Now we know that Q1 equals to C1V, Q2 equals to C2V, and Q3 equals to C3V. So I can apply this concept and I can keep the values of Q1, Q2, Q3 like this. Now, as you know, V is common across all first left hand side and right hand side, so you can discard, or you can divide the entire equation with V. You'll get C1 plus C2 plus C3 will be equivalent to C equivalent. So, in general, capacitance in parallel adds up. So, suppose if you have I number of capacitors, then the total capacitance will be equal to sum of all the capacitance, whatever are linked in parallel. This is very important to remember that whenever capacitors are in parallel, the equivalent capacitance will be sum of all the capacitance involved in that parallel circuit. If you recall, in case of resistors, that is inverse of what we have done in this. The same result we get when we say that resistors are connected in series. If you recall from your previous +2 classes, then in case of resistors, if they are in series, we get the equivalent resistance as sum of all the resistance. But in case of parallel, it is very important to remember that the equivalent capacitance will be sum of all the capacitors connected in parallel. So that is how you can find out the equivalent capacitance or overall capacitance of a circuit in which I have capacitors connected in parallel. Now the second concept is, suppose circuits containing capacitors are in series. So this is the scenario now, C1, C2, C3. There are three capacitors. I have a voltage supply, that is a battery, which has a plus and minus polarity. So plus Q flows from the battery to the left plate of C1. As you can see, I have given a diagram. So this is how the motion of charge will be. It goes from plus to there plus. So we have a plus polarity over C1. Similarly, negative goes over here, as you can see. So there will be negative polarity over here. Now the second thing is how to see what are the other polarities. So I can define these polarities, minus and plus. C2 is neutral in this circuit, so it will have the polarity of plus and minus in this case. I don't think there is nothing new. They are in series. So you know this will be the polarities of C1, C2 and C3. So I hope that there is nothing to explain much about this. I understand you know the concept. I will quickly go to the mathematical part. So we have C1, C2, C3 and the charges, whatever the charge will be, in this case the charges will be same on all the capacitors. So if you say Q equivalent, that will be equivalent to Q1, Q2, Q3. That's why whatever the charge will be, the amount of charge will be same, and that's why I'm denoting charge with Q. So if you look at the first capacitance, the Q will be equivalent to C1 V1. So C1 is the capacitance of first capacitor. V1 is the voltage across the first capacitor. Now, if you look from the point of view of second capacitor, Q will be equivalent to C2 V2, and for the third capacitor, Q will be equivalent to C3 V3. So this is how we have voltage 1, voltage 2, and voltage 3. Now we know the overall voltage will be equivalent to V1 plus V2 plus V3. That is what we know from the concept of voltage or the concept of Ohm's law. So we have VAB, that is voltage across this, will be equivalent to V1 plus V2 plus V3. So general concept also is there that we use Ohm's law, and we can prove this also, that when circuit components are connected in series, then the voltage drops across these components adds up to the total voltage drop. This is standard law of Ohm's law, which says that total voltage across a loop will be zero. This can be also thought of about a loop. So this is a loop, and the overall voltage will be zero. So this is having a different polarity from here. So this voltage will be equivalent to summation of this plus this plus. So that is what I have done. I hope this is something which you have learned long back. Nothing to have more emphasis on. So we have this. So C equivalent can be written as Q equals to C equivalent V. We can equate everything, and we can simply write it as Q VAB will be equivalent to V1 plus V2 plus V3. We can write now what will be value of VAB and all. So we can write it as V will be equivalent to Q upon C1 plus Q upon C2 plus Q upon C3. Simply do the math. We will substitute value of V. So Q will cancel out, and you will have 1 upon C equivalent will be equivalent to 1 by C1 plus 1 by C2 plus 1 by C2. So that is how you can calculate overall capacitance of capacitors which are connected in series. In actual problem, please remember you have to invert the value of CQ. So this is how you can write generalized. So 1 upon C equivalent will be equivalent to, if I number of capacitors are connected in series, then this will be the summation of 1 by C of all the capacitors. So please try to understand this, as well as try to logically figure it out whether the given circuit has capacitors in parallel or they have capacitors in series. So there are two essential type of examples what I have done for you: capacitors connected in series and capacitors connected in parallel. So if from the exam point of view, if you are asked to find out the equivalent capacitors, then you know equivalent capacitance of this particular capacitors will be equivalent to summation of all C, and for series case 1 upon C equivalent will be equivalent to summation of 1 upon all C. If you talk about charges, all charges adds, all charges can be added, and all these can be added. So if you look in the parallel capacitor circuit, then we have same voltage across all the capacitors. And if you look in series, we have same charge across all the capacitors. So that is very important to remember, that what happens in parallel capacitor, or what happens in capacitors when they are connected in parallel, and what happens in the capacitors when they are connected in series. Same voltage should be remembered, and same charge should be remembered. So this is very traditional, and I hope everyone knows this. It's no rocket science in this. A simple calculation, you can easily find out what will be the equivalent capacitance of a circuit which has n number of capacitors. Either they are connected in parallel or they are connected in series. There are many cases where you will find out that there are capacitors which are connected in parallel as well as series in the same circuit. So you have to analyze those circuits in a proper way, try to understand the circuit, and then try to find out the equivalent capacitance of that particular circuit. So I will quickly give you one example. So we have a typical circuit. I am not applying any voltage to it. So right now, let us consider there is a combination of a circuit in this particular session. I have three capacitors, C1, C2, and C3, and all capacitance are same. So we have capacitance of C1, which is equivalent to C2, which is equivalent to C3, and which can be written as equivalent to C. Now we need to find out what will be the capacitance of this entire circuit, or what will be the overall capacitance due to all these three capacitors connected in this particular session. So let us see. Start the combining parallel combinations of C2 and C3. As you can see, C2 and C3 are in parallel. You can apply the concept of C2 and C3. This is the case what I am pertaining to right now. So we can simply say C23 will be equivalent to C2 plus C3, and C2 and C3 equals to C. So C plus C will be equivalent to 2C. So C23 will be equivalent to 2C. That is the capacitance between these two parallel capacitors, namely C2 and C3. Now I can see C323, which is equivalent to those parallel combinations, is now in series with C1. And C23 value we have already found out as 2C, and C1 equals to C. Now you can see these two are in series. You can easily apply the concept of series capacitors, and now you can find out 1 upon C equivalent will be equivalent to 1 by C1 plus 1 by C23. So you have the all calculations. C1 equals to C, C23 equals to 2C. Simply keep the values and you will get it as 1 by C equivalent will be equivalent to 3 by 2C. So C equivalent, you invert it, it will be equivalent to 2 by 3C. So the overall capacitance of these three capacitors will be 2 by 3C. Please remember this. So this was an example, typical example, where I have two capacitors which are in parallel and the third capacitor is in series. So I hope you can find out equivalent capacitance of the circuit of a particular system which have n number of capacitors. Capacitors can be in parallel, they can be in series. Whatever case it is, you try to discretize the geometry in parallel and series combination, and then you find out the equivalent resistance, the equivalent capacitance, and gradually you will get, after doing many calculus and calculations, you will finally get what will be the capacitance of the entire system which has combination of capacitors. There is another typical example. So this example has two parts. Please remember it has two parts. And first part is simple. For the capacitor circuit, which is shown over here, we have combinations of capacitors and we have a voltage source that has a potential difference delta V. It is connected to this combination of capacitors. Now there are two parts of the statement, problem statement. It says we need to find out the equivalent capacitance, and if delta V is 12, then find the potential difference across P4. So work it out on the if someone is talking, so please I hope you can mute someone. Okay. Great. So for this particular circuit, we need to calculate equivalent capacitance, and delta V is 12, then what will be the potential difference across P4? So we are looking this circuit and we need to find out equivalent capacitance. Okay, C1, C2, C3 and C4 are already given for you. Simple calculations you have to do. So first part, which is to find out the equivalent capacitance, that is very simple because you already know this. I have done it in the last example. The second part is little bit tricky because we need to find out voltage across capacitor number 4, that is C4. So I will give you step-by-step calculations. Generally, I don't recommend people should skip the steps because from exam point of view, skipping step means you are liable to have some errors or you do some mistakes. So I recommend students, I also recommend anyone who does this calculation, please follow step by step and do step by step calculation, and you give the end product in a particular systematic fashion. So I will give you a systematic analysis of the circuit, how to do this, and let us see what final equivalent capacitance and voltage across 3, 4 we find out, right? So this is the scenario, as you already know. First part is to find out C equivalent. I have made it in yellow color, so we have to find C equivalent. So C1 and C3 are not in parallel, as you can see. C1 and C3 alone are not in parallel because we have one more capacitor C2 along this. So this C1 and C3 alone cannot be said to be parallel. So this is one important thing to understand. C2 and C4 are not in series. Again, C2 and C3 are not in series. Now this concept can be understood that when we move from here we get a path. Since we get two paths, these two cannot be in series. C1 and C2, when I move from C1 to C2, you can see there is no other path. Since there is no other path between two capacitors, these two capacitors can be considered as series. So that is very important to understand. If I have a multi-path configuration, or if I have many paths to move through, then that particular combination will be known as parallel combination. And if I don't have any path, then that combination will be known as series combination. So let us start with this. As I have already said, since there is no multiple path between C1 and C2, we will consider C1 and C2 as series. So on considering C1 and C2 as series, let us see what calculation we get. C12, that is the overall capacitance of C1 and C2, can be written as 1 upon C12. You do the algebra, you do the math, you will get it as 1 by 2. So finally, between C1 and C2, the capacitance will be 2 microfarad. That is as per our calculation. Please don't forget to invert it, because from the formula we know this is 1 by C12. So C12 will be inverse of this. That comes to be 2 microfarad. So we have the scenario now. So we know that C12 is 2 microfarad, C3 is 2 microfarad, C4 is 4 microfarad. Now again we will try to analyze this circuit, because we have found out equivalent capacitance between C1 and 2. Now let us look in the circuit and how it looks. I hope this circuit is very familiar to what we have done in our last example. Except in that example, all capacitance were equal to C. In this case, we have different capacitance, and also we have a voltage source or a battery connected. So let us see how to do it. Again, we will have the same analogy what we have done in previous case. So C12 and C4 are not in series. So C12 and C4 are not in series because as you move from C12 to C4, what happens at this point, we have two paths. Since we have two paths, it cannot be in series. It is not in series. Let us see now what combination are. Now C12 and C3 are parallel, as you can see. These two are in parallel. So make sure you use the correct equation. So now we can apply the parallel combination, and I can write the overall equivalent capacitance of C12 and C3 will be equivalent to C123. I'm pointing it with respect to C123, which will be equivalent to C12 plus C3. That will be equivalent to 2 plus 2, which goes to the 4 microfarad. So we have got equivalent as C123 as 4 microfarad. Simple calculation, nothing much to do, simple math. I hope you will be able to do it. Now C123 we have got, that is 4 microfarad. C4 you know, that is again 4 microfarad. Now you know there is no multiple path between these two capacitors. So these two capacitors are now in series. Now since they are in series, you apply the concept of series. So you can find out equivalent, C equivalent. This 1 upon C equivalent will be equivalent to 1 upon C123 plus 1 upon C24. And finally you will get it as C equivalent as 2 microfarad. That was the first part. I hope now you understood how to calculate C equivalent of the entire combination of capacitors. Once you have done this, let us move to the second part. The second part is what will be the value of V4, that is voltage across. So this is how you have got it. I will go to the next question. So the next question is what will be voltage drop across the fourth capacitor, that is C4. So how to calculate this V? So I have given some unknown identities on each capacitor. Capacitance is already we know because it is mentioned in the question. That was part of the question. Now we are looking to find out voltages across each and every capacitor. So if I know the charge, I can find out the voltage, because we know there is a relationship between charge, voltage and capacitance. If we know charge Q4, we can calculate V4. So let us see from this understanding, let us try to analyze how to calculate V4 for this particular capacitor. Okay. So if you recall, just prior to the calculation of this, we were at this scenario. So C4 is in series with C123 and together they form C equivalent. And you know for series, charge is going to be same. Yes, please.
Sir, very simply, we can do it if I find out capacitance of the equivalent capacitance we got.
Yes.
That is 2P. Then we can find out the equivalent charge, total charge.
Yes, correct. The total charge will be equivalent to Q4 and you can find out V4. Right.
That is Q equal 24 aa jayega.
Right.
Now we can apply these combination. Q remains same. So Q equal C4.
Yes, correct. That is what I will do.
V4 equals U C upon.
Correct. That is what you can do easily. So as she was saying, that is correct. That comes 24 microcoulombs, and you can simply do it. C will be equivalent to 6 volts. So I hope now you have understood how to calculate series and parallel combinations. Now you know how to calculate capacitance, you know how to calculate charge, you know how to calculate volts, potential difference of a capacitor. So that is what I hope everyone knows from your fundamental physics, what you have learned in +2. And such type of questions are asked on electromagnetic theory from the point of view of charge. What will be the charge? And fundamentally, people are not interested in charge, they are interested in capacitance. What is the amount of energy stored? What is the amount of energy dissipated by a capacitor? So that is our next segment. We will study how it is. For time being, you really need to know these two concepts. When capacitors are in series, all have the same charge. Add the voltage to get the total voltage. When capacitors are in parallel, all have the same voltage. You have to add the charges to get the total charge. So this is what you already know, but I still urge students to please remember these concepts. These concepts are very simple and very important when you actually solve this circuit theory or concepts of capacitor when they are used in form of energy. So any questions till here, then we can go ahead with our next segment for today. So I hope there's no questions because generally people don't ask questions. So still I will wait for a few seconds and then I will start with the next segment. Fine, so I will start with the next segment for this. as I was saying, that everyone, now you all know what will be the capacitance of a capacitor, what will be the charge, what will be the potential difference. We have done the calculation. Even that type of things you have done in your plus two also. Right? But what makes it very interesting, that the amount of energy stored in a capacitor, that amount of energy stored in some form of charge, and how to get that energy which is stored in the capacitor, and how a capacitor is different from a battery. These all concepts are essentially used when we talk about electrostatic energy. So that is what we will need to learn today, that what will be the amount of energy stored in a capacitor. And we are also going to see what will be the effect of dielectrics if instead of air, as you all can recall, in all our previous cases, what we have done, we have used two plates, either in cylindrical form or in a spherical form, or you say about the same simple plate, and we have introduced air between them. Instead of air, if I use some sort of dielectric, then what will be the impact? And in practical world, air cannot be used. There are so many disadvantages of air. We will discuss them in detail at some higher level. But air is generally not used as a dielectric medium when we use capacitors. So there is some other materials that should be used. Dielectrics are those materials. And let us try to understand what will be the impact of these dielectrics on the capacitance or amount of energy stored in that particular capacitor. So that is we will try to learn today, and we will try to understand from energy point of view that what is the energy stored in a capacitor and how that energy can be taken out from the capacitor. Okay. So what is the energy stored in a capacitor? So it is nothing but it is work to charge a capacitor. So whatever amount of work is done to charge a capacitor, that much amount of energy will be stored in a capacitor. Because work is of course a form of energy. So that work which is required to charge a capacitor, that much amount of energy, or you call it that much amount of charge, will be stored in that particular capacitor. So capacitors already have charge. So you know capacitor have plus Q and minus Q charge. We have delta V is the potential difference of the capacitor. So if we move an extra charge, as I am showing, if I have a small amount of charge delta Q, and if I move it from one plate to another plate, then there will be small amount of work, that is delta V, the dV will be required, and that dV will be equivalent to dQ into delta V. The dQ is the small amount of charge, delta V is the potential difference between these two charges. So again I can tell you what I am saying. Suppose there is a small amount of charge, that is dQ. A small amount of work will be done to move that charge from negative to positive, or you call it as from one potential to another potential. So that amount of work is dV. Now you know dV equals to delta V dQ. Delta V, from our definition, we know it is equivalent to Q upon C, where Q is the charge of the capacity, charge of the plates, Q upon C. Now starting with 0 charge and ending up with Q charge, you will get the actual amount of work done to store the particular capacitor with charge, because charge will be stored. So work done will be equivalent from 0 to Q, dW. dW is the small amount of work, which is equivalent to Q upon C into dQ. This is Q upon C into dQ. So I can straight away write in this particular form. And finally, work done will be equivalent to Q square upon 2C. Q square upon 2C is the amount of work done to charge the entire capacitor with a charge Q. So work required to charge the capacitor is nothing but change in potential energy. That is also very true from the potential energy point of view, that VF, final potential energy, minus initial potential energy, will be equivalent to the amount of work done by the external force. So since the capacitor was empty or it has zero potential energy at the initial point, the final potential energy will be equivalent to Q square upon 2C. So the potential energy stored in capacitor is U, that will be Q square by 2C, where C is capacitance and Q is charge. The charge stored in the capacitor. If Q equals to CV, there are three equivalent expressions. You can write it as in terms of U equals to Q square upon 2C, or you can write it equivalent to CV square upon 2, or also you can write it as with respect to QV upon 2. So there are different forms of expressing what will be the total amount of energy stored in a capacitor. All these equations are valid. Use the one most convenient for the problem at the time. So all three equations are correct. They are just interchanging the terms. We are using the concept of Q equals to CV. Finally, whatever equation you find it suitable for a particular problem, you can use any of them. But fundamentally, all three equations are true and they are correct. Four quantities for a capacitor now we have learned. We have learned C, Q, V, and U. C is the capacitance, Q is the charge stored, V is the potential difference, and U is the potential energy. Fundamentally, if I know any of the two quantities, then I can find out the remaining two quantities from the mathematics what we already did. So this is very important. If I know any of the two quantities, I can find out the remaining two quantities by using the concept or by using the mathematical formula what are being given on the screen. So I will be giving a typical example, a very common example which we use in cameras. So I say a camera flash unit stores energy. The unit store energy in 150 microfarad capacitor at 200 volts. How much electric energy can be stored? So I have a direct formula for amount of energy stored is CV square upon 2. So you know the capacitance, you know the potential. So you can straight away tell me that this is the amount of energy which is stored in a camera flash which has a capacitance of 150 microfarad and a potential of 200 volts. So it was a simple, if you are using an SI unit, you can simply write it that this is the amount of energy stored in a particular camera flash whose specifications are given with this. This is a very common scenario. 150 microfarad capacitor is used mostly in traditional cameras. Nowadays, specifications are changing depending upon the flash requirement, energy requirement. But traditionally, this is very true. So let us see energy stored in capacitor versus energy stored in batteries. I hope everyone knows what is a battery and what is a capacitor. So I will also try to relate what capacitor and difference between capacitor and batteries at a later stage. But for time being, I'm just giving a comparison. Suppose you have a 12-watt battery and 100 amperes current, that is 12 volts and 100 amperes current. Now the charge stored in that particular battery is 3.6, that battery is 3.6 into 10 to the power 5 coulombs, and energy which is stored is 4.3 into 10 to the power 6 joules. At the same time, if I talk about a capacitor which is operating at 12 volts and whose range is 100 microfarad capacitance, then the amount of energy stored is 7.2 into 10 to the power minus 3. It is billion times less the energy stored in a 12 volt capacitor as compared to a 12 volt battery. Now the question arises, if I have a battery of 12 volts and if I have a capacitor of 12 volts, the amount of energy stored in a battery is a billion times more than the amount of energy stored in a capacitor. Then why should we use capacitors at all? we can directly use the battery instead of using capacitor, which is far better because energy is large and we can use that energy. So I will try to address these two questions. If battery stores so much more energy, why we use capacitor? So first condition is the capacitor stores charge physically, battery stores charge chemically. So battery is a chemical device, right? There will be chemicals that will be storing charge. But in capacitors, it will be simple dielectric medium. So dielectric will be storing some sort of charge. And fundamentally, capacitors can release stored energy or stored charge much faster. Since the amount of energy which is stored in battery, that won't come very fast, it will come gradually. Slowly the amount of energy can be extracted. But energy from the capacitors can be easily extracted at a fraction of second. So tremendous amount of energy is coming out from a particular capacitor. As you would have seen in case of flash. In case of flash, what happens? The capacitor releases instant energy and it becomes in form of a huge amount of light. But same thing cannot happen in battery. If you recall, the flash has a larger energy as compared to the energy which we get from normal torches. The condition is that they use a capacitor. And in case of normal torches, we use batteries. Batteries give gradual amount of energy, but capacitor gives instant amount of energy with high power. So that is the difference. And depending upon our application, we use either capacitor or we use either battery. So applications of capacitors are very important. So the first application is short pulse magnet at the National Magnet Laboratory in US. They are using it. Even in our Indian laboratories like National Aeronautic Limited and all, we use such type of capacitors for short pulse magnet. So if 10 to the power k joules of energy are stored at high voltage in a capacitor bank and released during a period of 2 milliseconds, the enormous current produces incredible high magnetic field. So that is very important use of capacitor. That if a high energy capacitor is there at a high voltage and that energy is released within a fraction of second, in a millisecond, then we have a very high magnetic field. So this is one application. So you can see this will be high amount of magnetic energy will be released. Picture is patent. I have taken it from US National Magnet Lab where this picture was. The second application, you can use quarter shrinker or we call it as coin shrinker also. So we have capacitance connected to this. We release some energy at a particular instant, and what happens after releasing energy, you can see the coin gets shrink. So these are the various form of the coins which we have obtained, which they have obtained, of course, we have obtained. This is from National Laboratory of US. So when they provide different amount of energy, then you can see how their coin shrinks. At 4300 joules, coin, the original is this, it shrinks to this amount, at 5000 shrinks to this, at 5400 it shrinks to this, and vice versa. So they can shrink the coin. That is also an application of a capacitor. US is using this for some of their industries and well. We can also have can crushers. From physics point of view, can be crushed. That is also very interesting for undergraduate students to understand that how these capacitors can be used to crush the can. That is also some of the laboratories perform this experiment for making undergraduate students understand how capacitor works and all. This is how we do it. So now the next question is, where does the energy which is stored resides? You know there is a capacitor, there is some charge, there is potential difference, we have capacitance, and we know what is the potential energy stored. But in which form the energy is, that is very important to understand. Whether energy is in form of charges or it is in form of some fields, or it is in form of some waves or what. So let us try to understand that where and in which form the energy is stored in a capacitor. So I have the formula of potential energy where U equals to half C delta V square. U is potential energy, that is actually the energy stored, which we have already done, which will be equivalent to half C. C is the capacitance of the capacitor. Delta V is the potential difference. This is the energy stored. We know C equals to epsilon naught A upon D for parallel plate capacitor. And from the standard add equation, we know delta V equals to ED. So these things we already know. So I can straight away keep these particular things. Area is area of the plates, as you know. This is the area of these two plates. I can simply keep the value of delta V and I can keep value of C from there. So I finally end up with U equals to 1 by 2 epsilon naught AD E square. If I am talking about energy per unit volume, and you can see from the diagram that area into distance, this is area into distance, will give you the volume of this particular capacitor. So if I divide this energy stored with volume, then I can straight away write it that with small energy U, which is also known as energy density U, which is energy per unit volume, which will be equivalent to capital U, that is energy stored upon the volume. So finally you will get it as half epsilon naught E square. Half epsilon naught E square is the energy density. If energy density is this, then the energy, we can finally say the energy resides in the electric field between the plates. I hope the concept is very clear. That the amount of energy inside the capacitor resides in form of electric field between the plates. This is our understanding that electric field is the quantity in which energy will be stored inside a capacitor. So electric fields are the fields which is nothing but they are the energy which will be storing this charges and all. An electric field is the component of energy which is there in a capacitor, and that is very true because even work is related to electric field, and work is nothing but form of energy. That's why we say in a capacitor, electric field between those two plates. In that particular plates, the energy will be stored. So let us move to our next concept then. So dielectrics and impact of dielectrics on capacitor. What will happen that instead of using air as a medium between two plates, if I introduce a dielectric material, then what will be the impact of that dielectric material on the capacitance, on the energy stored, on the potential difference, or any other parameter of the capacitor. So let us try to understand what is the impact of that dielectric. So as you know, these are the two parallel plates. I have a dielectric medium. Dielectric medium will have some sort of dielectric constant. We call it as epsilon R, or we call it as K, kappa K. So if I have an insulating material which is placed between the capacitor plates, capacitance increases by a factor of kappa. The kappa is the dielectric constant. So what we are doing, we are taking this sheet and we are introducing between these dielectric medium. So we know the capacitance of a capacitor is epsilon naught A upon D. If I have a dielectric material which have dielectric constant other than of air, then there is kappa comes into picture. Kappa is dielectric constant of this particular material. So as you know that now C is directly proportional to K. So capacitance will increase K times the actual capacitance which was there without the presence of the dielectric material. So capacitance will increase by an amount or by the times as we increase the dielectric constant. Generally, for some material I have mentioned the dielectric constant. So for vacuum it is 1. For air it is somewhat about 1.006. We generally consider air as a vacuum in most of the cases. But in practical world, even because of air, we will have some other sort of dielectric constant. So kappa for air is 1.006. For PVC, we have kappa as 3.18. And there is one material, even I don't know the full form of this, but it is some alloy of titanium, which has kappa of 310. So it is very interesting. If I use this vacuum, then capacitance will be suppose X. And if I use PVC, the capacitance will increase to 3 times. And if I use some other material between these sheets, suppose this material, then simply introducing a material of a higher dielectric constant, suppose this is 310, then the capacitance of this capacitor will increase to 310 times. That is very interesting. But what will be the impact on other parameters, that we have to see one by one. Right. So let us see how dielectric constant works. Dielectric works. So dielectric generally contains dipoles. Dielectric has dipoles. Dipoles align in the electric field. So if I have a dipoles in the dielectric, as you can see, then electric field is from positive field to negative field. Then dipoles will be aligned like this. Induced charges partially compensate charge on the plate. So there will be induced charge because of the dielectric. Electric field and voltage in capacitor reduces by delta V equals to ED. So that is what electric fields and voltage in capacitor will reduce because of introduction of dielectric, and capacitance will increase. Capacitance we have already seen that as dielectric constant increases, then capacitance will increase. So I hope that's all for today. Now we will start some mathematical calculations that tomorrow. So I will end up today by this because after 3 minutes I have another meeting to attend, 3 or 4 minutes. So I will have to join that meeting shortly, an important meeting. But anyways, if you have any questions, then you can pop up some questions. I hope many less people are listening. So we have 5 people only listening to this session. So anyways, if you have any questions, please go ahead with the questions. Otherwise, that's all from my side for today. We will continue the same session tomorrow at 11:10 or 11:15. I don't know when TechTube will start. So hope there are no questions. If you have questions, please do ask.
Sir.
Yeah, please go
Good.
ahead.
Good. Sir, I'm Sadish.
Yes.
Hello. Sir, one more request for you.
Yes,
Sir, after completion this course,
Yeah.
the PPT will be shared with me, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, some network problems are there. Sometimes some slides are
Okay,
missing
okay.
also. So, personally
Sure,
request
sure.
for you,
After
sir.
this session, I will share. Means on 24th, I will have the last
Okay.
session. After that, I will mail you. Please give me your mail ID. I will mail you. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Yeah. Okay, then bye bye everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.